Now, I want your calls on this now. Are prisons too tough in Britain? 020 7862 2222 is the number. Today marks the start of the Lawless Britain season on 5, with a series of documentaries, dramas and special news coverage, all focusing on crime and punishment. We'll be taking part 2 with debates on prisons, on knife crime, arming police, even the death penalty across this show. Across Storm's show and Vanessa's. Now, we're often hearing stories about inmates having an easy time in prison with TVs and gyms. Tonight, 5 takes an unprecedented look inside one of Britain's most notorious jails, Wandsworth.
HMP Wandsworth is a Victorian prison that is falling apart.
Look at the conditions that we're living in, brother.
It is a place which reeks of decay.
A jail where lawlessness reigns on the wings.
Just started smashing up laundry cupboards, laundry rooms, kicking the doors off.
And contraband and corruption is king.
That's Wandsworth Prison Out of Control, which is on 5 at 9 p.m. tonight. But let's look at some stats too. According to government figures, there's been a 10% increase in deaths in prison last year. 342 people died. There are more serious assaults as well, up 13% on the previous year, with an increase both in prisoner-on-prisoner assaults and attacks on prison staff. Is that because prisons are too tough, or are they just out of control? What do you think, Stella?
I think that the problem with prisons is that they have been under-resourced for many, many decades. And the reason is because it's very difficult for politicians to come out and make the case for why more money needs to go into the justice system. So it has been a very convenient place for successive conservative governments to cut the budget. And the pinnacle of that was, of course, the former Conservative Justice Secretary, Chris Grayling, trying to reform the probation service and completely butchering it. He privatized it and he made it so that at the moment it is basically incredibly difficult for when prisoners come out of jail. The probation staff there are completely overwhelmed, which means that you have this revolving door where people come out of prison. They are not able to deal with the probation services, and then they are back inside before you know it. And that is to a great expense of the taxpayer. And of course, it means that people are basically never rehabilitated properly.
Yeah. Well, you probably agree with some of that.
I agree with some of that. I think that there are a number of problems. I think that there are staff that don't want to be prison officers anymore, and I think it's an horrific job to be a prison officer because I think that there is such a danger of you being attacked. I think that prison is no longer constructive. And when I say constructive, I don't believe your privileges should be that you're able to have television or PlayStation. I believe your privilege should be that you're able to actually get educated. There are certain amazing schemes like Prison Radio Association, like the prison that's near where I am, where they have a restaurant where prisoners actually learn how to be in the kitchens and leave with those skills. That's amazing. It's a privilege, though, and you should have to earn that. There's a problem with extremism in prison. I mean, I think we've seen reports of Islamic extremism being a really big issue in prisons as well, and that being a big way in which order is kept, but also ultimately is sort of a worse thing as to what's going on in prisons. And I think also that we spend a lot of resources on long-term prisoners, where I think actually we need to have a serious conversation about the money we spend on them and whether some crimes should be punishable by the death penalty, and those resources being used on actually making prisons more constructive for those prisoners who are borderline, who actually would benefit from education, or, as I say, those things I mentioned before, those constructive ways in which prison can rehabilitate.
Martin in West Yorkshire, you were in prison for a time, I understand.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
What do you mind telling me roughly what for?
Basically, when I was younger, mixing in with the wrong crowd. But
okay.
You know something? That's not really why I've called, basically. Sure. What it is I watch the show with my mum every morning, yeah? My mum loves you, right? And basically
Thanks,
what it is prison, basically, these days, like they're saying you're saying they're too full all the time and stuff, yeah? But they keep sending people back to prison over silly little things like missing appointments and stuff like that. Not getting there on time or stuff like that. Yeah. And then like not just that, it's like swapping over from like talking about the Prime Minister of the UK, but letting immigrants into the country and stuff, and then all the UK citizens are suffering from it and stuff, and it's not fair at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think prisons work better if they're bad places to be?
No, I think they'd work better if they stop employing people without an education. They say you do not need an education to work in a prison, but the younger population are making the older generation look bad because the older generation are rubbing off the younger generation.
I see, Martin. OK, thank you, and love to your mum. Petrina in Hampshire, hi.
Morning, Jeremy. Good morning, Stella.
It sounds like Five, this documentary tonight, is going to show Wandsworth Prison is really a disgusting place. We kind of knew that, but they've got rats, they've got everything going on there. Do you think that that's what a prison should be?
No, absolutely not. You've got to have hygiene. You have to have certain standards. What I'm going to say, you're going to probably shoot me down in flames, but it's time we bring back the workhouse. It's a very Victorian idea. Rather than prisoners lounging a time and playing your PlayStation, watching your television, going to the gym, if they knew that they were going to be going in from 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock, doing a job with, like most people have, 2 breaks, one in the afternoon, say a half an hour for lunch, and not be paid for it, I'm sure that most of those children would look, not children, I do beg your pardon, most offenders would look at that and think, I'm going to be doing work for 2 years without pay. What am I thinking?
Well, in the old days, do you remember in the States they used to get them to sew mailbags? That was always the thing, the caricature.
Exactly, yes, exactly. We could get, there's a lot of things that can be done, making toys for children, what have you. You know, there are many things that you can do to not just educate a person, but to give them a point of reference. When they come out, they can say to an employer, I was working, I'm good at working with people, I'm good at working with my hands, I'm good on a computer. It's a helpful thing rather than a...
I see. What about that, Stella? Bring it back as a workhouse.
The problem is I wouldn't be against that, and I'm not against, especially, as you say, training prisoners, because we want to do that. That is part of the rehabilitation process, so that when they come out, they know how to do something else. But there is a logistics problem there, because you need resources to do all of that. I know that it sounds like a good idea because, oh, the prisoners will be working for free, so basically they will be making up for this, but not really, because you need the resources, you need extra staff members who will be watching after them when they're working, you need the people who will be training them, you will need the people who will be transporting them.
Okay,
no one wants to be a prison officer anymore because it's absolutely thankless and it's
dangerous.
Dangerous.
It's a dangerous job. Thanks, Petrina. Maria in London, what do you think? What's your experience? You've had a partner who was in prison, is that right?
I have. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a partner who was in Wandsworth for about a year and a half, and he told me when I used to call him every day, it was like for the country club. His biggest problem was that they didn't have a particular TV channel, and
they didn't have a TV channel. Rats.
Yeah, right. He feed the rats outside the window, and my attitude was, if you can't do the crime, don't do the crime.
Oh.
I had absolutely no time for his nonsense about TV channels.
What was his crime? I always have to ask this question. What did he do?
Yeah, he was in for aggravated assault.
So hitting someone, right? And he complained that they didn't have Channel 5.
No, it was with an axe. But actually,
an axe.
Yeah, an axe. And he was in for 7 years.
And blimey, and he was upset they didn't have Channel 5.
Oh, well, whatever channel, I don't know. But I refuse. I mean, there was one point where they didn't have his size shoes when he first went in there, because this was during COVID, so he had to wear prison regulation shoes.
OK, Maria, thank you. So he complained about the shoes and the lack of TV choice. My God. Thanks for your calls. A reminder, you can watch Wandsworth Prison Out of Control on 5 tonight at 9 p.m. After the break, it's the papers and everything else, including how...